Thank you, Tara. I'm going to start with a question. And this is a question that we're asked 10, 20, 30 times a day. And we very rarely answer that question honestly, particularly when it comes to our mental well-being. But if we could answer that question honestly and authentically, it could change our behavior and it could change our life. Do you know what that question is? That question is, how are you? And we say, I'm good, I'm fine, I'm okay, or my particular favorite, I'm not too bad. What a way to answer it. But we never stopped to answer it authentically. It's a greeting, it's a ritual. So what about if we were to just change the emphasis, change the game, and add a word that might make us a little bit more intentional about adding it? So in a while, I'm going to ask you, how are you today? My name is Rob Stephenson. I'm a mental health campaigner. I'm the founder of something called the Inside Out Leaderboard. I'm the CEO of Formscore. And I'm on a mission of helping inspire the creation of mentally healthier workplaces and societies. And those are workplaces where people can put their hand up and say, I'm struggling with mental ill health, and seek help. But they're also workplaces where people feel equipped, empowered, and have permission to prioritize their well-being. Now, this mission is personal to me. I experience bipolar disorder. And there are many things that define us. I'm a father, a cyclist, I'm a DJ, I'm a CEO, I'm a social entrepreneur. I am not a behavioural scientist. But then, listening to Rory earlier, maybe we're all behavioural scientists. But I experience bipolar disorder, which is a mental illness. And it's a mental illness that is characterised by extremes of mood, from deep, dark depression on one hand to periods of hypomania on the other. And sometimes I can't get out of bed and do my job or look after my children. Other times I can take risks, I can seek out risks. I believe that I'm always right. Invariably, I'm not. But I deliberately use the words experience rather than suffer, because at times I do suffer for sure. But I also experience periods of drive, creativity, and ability to challenge the status quo and get things done. So I was diagnosed when I was 30. I'm 49 now. When I was 31, at a time where I'd lost hope and had a sense of futility, I tried to end my life. And from that really low point, with the love of close friends and family around me, I learned to manage my condition. And I learned that medication helps. And I'm looking forward to some of the psychedelics for my condition as they progress from the previous presentation. I learned that therapy helps. And I've had many different sorts of therapy over the years. But I also learned that proactively managing my well-being was more effective. Prioritizing exercise, sleep, social connections, spending time with people that give me joy. And I've learned to proactively manage my well-being over the last 15, 20 years. But I did so under the radar because of the stigma. Now, one of the tools that helped me on this journey was answering that question, how are you today, with a very simple way. So if I could ask Lieutenant Commander Data to get my slides up. And one of my other ideas for this talk was actually to look at the behavioural science aspects of Star Trek captains. For me, Picard is probably the greatest captain, but Janeway would come in a second. But anyway, if we could just jump to the next slide while I get the clicker to work. So we're going to answer this question, how are you today? And first of all, I'm going to tell you how I am today. So today, I'm an 8 out of 10. If we go to the next slide, I'm not sure my clicker's going. There we go. So I'm on very good form today. And what I'm going to do is just take you through the questions that I ask myself to reflect on answering this question today, how are you today, with the score out of 10. And the score out of 10 is an important bit because it gives us a common language to describe how we're feeling with something that we're very uncomfortable talking about. So how motivated are you? And I invite you to reflect on these questions with a sense of lightness and curiosity. I'm really motivated. I'm slightly overwhelmed to be presenting here, but very motivated to do so. My energy levels are really good. I'm experiencing long COVID. So I've got good energy today, which is good. But how about you? Tasks and decisions feel very straightforward to me right now. But how about you? And then my sleep has been pretty good. Could have done with a bit more. That's probably stopping me being a 9, but I've slept well recently. My diet is balanced and nutritious. How about you? And then importantly, how is your sense of purpose right now? I'm feeling highly purposeful as a campaigner trying to change the world. But what about you? I think a lot of us on this audience will be pretty purposeful. And then how connected to friends, to family, to colleagues are you at a time where we've needed to be physically distant to be safe? I hate the word social distancing. I lobbied to get it changed. I was unsuccessful. I should have asked Rory to do it. But how connected are you to people that mean stuff in your life? And then how well are we balancing stress with moments of recovery? Headspace is a great tool for helping do this. But the way we work remotely, we're actually working harder, longer hours, and we're not commuting. It doesn't make sense. We don't have that discipline to put those recovery breaks in the day. And then how relaxed are you about your finances? I'm feeling pretty okay, but that's a worry for many right now. So they're the questions. Think about them. And then let's have a look at the scale. Now, the scale, again, normalizes the answers. So my 8 is very good form. And if you look there, we can see we've got the range. So just reflect where you might be on this scale, okay? Again, in a very light way. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do an online anonymous poll to answer this question. So if I could ask Lieutenant Commander Data to pull up the polling tool on the screen for me. And what you'll see there is we've got a QR code to scan, and I'm just going to get my version up so I can see it a little bit bigger as well. So scan that QR code, open up your camera icon on your phone, and this is an anonymous poll, okay? So we won't see who's posting what, and we've got a couple of thousand people on this call, so it's going to be fun when it starts coming in. You'll see open form poll now come, and then what we can do is just put your score in, and we'll start to see those scores populate in a little while. There's a bit of a delay, so I can see an 8 there, and we're going to start to see them coming. So, you know, a lot of 8s, and I'd imagine through the course of the day, actually, this festival, Nudgestock, will be a form booster. We'll see them grow. So, right, I'm starting to see them come through. It's looking fantastic there. So those that are putting 4s and 5s in, think about what's driving it. How long have you been a 4? What can you do to tweak it? Okay. And I'm really seeing them come in there. The 3 out of 10, that's a sign to seek some help. So look at the resources of your firm, your company, and tap into them. Use the EAP scheme, use some therapy, okay? If you don't have access to that, follow me on LinkedIn, send me a message and I'll get you some help, okay? If we could just flip it to the summary view, because this is just, it's fantastic. It's just getting populated. So if we can click on that QR code just to get it over there. The idea, if we're kind of 7s, 6s and 8s, is how can we maintain good form? How can we maintain that sense of thriving more of the time? And if we're a 2 or a 1, it's a crisis moment and we need to seek some help, okay? So great to see these results coming in. Again, Lieutenant Commander, if you wouldn't mind trying to just flip it to the summary view, just click on the change view or the QR code itself, and we'll get the summary there, but no worries if we can't. We're averaging 6.6 on the Formscore, which is great. Through the pandemic, we've been seeing an average of around 6, so we're slightly above that. We're certainly starting to see those numbers rise as we come out of out of this pandemic. So we'll just give it a little while for those to come through. The idea with this is to just be a little bit more intentional about our well-being. Just to reflect on that question on a daily basis and think, what is driving it? And that means we can then start to tweak it. So 6.6 on the average, so there's a few more coming through, but we've had about 400 people put results in. You can see them on your phone as well in the results. So thanks for doing that. So Lieutenant Commander, we could flip back to the presentation. That would be most excellent. And just crash forward to the next slide. So my brief plug, the Formscore app is how we've evolved this into a way of helping people connect. Helping people to connect on this number, so to be intentional about monitoring our own score, but then to connect with others so we can share scores. And then this allows us to offer peer support because we know when a friend, a colleague, a family member might need some help because they're a bit lower on the Formscore. Okay, we can also build up some insights into what's driving it based on those questions that we've asked you to share. So download it, Formscore on the various Apple stores and Google Play Store. It's a bit of a formatting issue on this slide, but the power of being open. Why does this matter? Well, a personal example, I was 4 out of 10 not that long ago because of the long COVID challenges that I'm experiencing, and the inability to exercise. I put this on the app, I posted it on LinkedIn. What happened? I got a number of inward supportive messages from people that care about me. A HR director sent me a photo of a sunrise on a morning walk. A dear friend of mine sent me a song suggestion. I can tell everyone here it was a terrible piece of music, but the fact that he'd taken the trouble to do so meant that my form was boosted. And by the end of the day, I was a 6 out of 10. Whereas before, with my periods of depression, I could have been a 4 or a 3 out of 10 for much, much longer. So the power of being open is really important. Because we all have mental health. We all have it, and the pandemic has shown us anything it is that 100% of us will know what it is like to struggle with mental ill health. And that could be as simple as homeschooling, worries about the economy, concerns about the virus, whatever it might be. But we all have it. But this is really powerful and interesting, because if we accept this, if we accept that we have it, we can then accept we're on this continuum from struggling through to thriving. And I find this one of the most empowering images where well-being and mental health is concerned, because it's not fixed, it's not black or white, it's not well or ill, it's not head in the hands when we talk about mental health. It is this continuum of being human. And we will oscillate on this continuum daily, hourly, and it changes. Now, for me, that knowledge brings power, because then we have the power to know that we can influence it. And how do we do that? We do that by being intentional about our well-being. So these are the drivers of well-being linked to those questions. They're not exclusive. There are others, but eating well, prioritizing sleep, making sure we get regular exercise, working on our social connections, particularly during these times, balancing the natural stress with moments of recovery. I loved Rory's comment of we're too busy to be effective. But one of the reasons that that's a problem is because we're not recovering from the stress that naturally we get in the workplace. So building in those micro breaks, super important. Helping others is good for our own well-being. Finding that sense of purpose, the reason for our being, is also crucially important, as is managing our finances. So just think about how they apply to you, whatever your score was. I've just seen a 2 out of 10 come through as well. So please, that person, reach out to me afterwards. Rob Stephenson with a PH on LinkedIn. I will get you some help. Think about how these apply to you, and what little step, what behavior change could you do to move more towards that thriving end? Okay. Now, the issue I've got a great simple tool for people to check in with themselves and check in with their friends and to aggregate up to get a real-time metric in workplaces. The idea of an ethical business as to how we then encourage people to keep doing that. I'd love to hear your comments on the chat. I know that's free behavioural science consulting that I'm asking for there, but just think about that. And I know Headspace were talking about it too. So what can we learn from the Formscore Universe? So we're collecting all of this data. This is real data from May. The colours represent different scores. Well, very simply, we can learn what's driving our scores at a population level. So what's positively impacting our mood? Travel. The world opening up. It's probably going to be negative again now we've got more amber countries in the UK. Exercise is one of the biggest positive drivers of our form. And connections, social connections, again, as we're opening up, spending time with people are meaningful. Stress management is the biggest negative driver, as is work. So, those things that we were talking about getting breaks in the day, being mindful in the day, really important. And physical health, actually, we're seeing as a big negative too. So that's what we can learn from the data. There's loads more that I could go through. But it's the simplicity that I want to share with you, really. Can even a notification change behavior? This is some feedback from one of our Formsters, our users of Form, a working mum who is checking on everyone. She has this notification asking, "How are you today?" pop up. She doesn't even necessarily put a score in each day. She reflects on how she's doing and thinks about what might she be able to do to manage her well-being more proactive, the choices that she makes to maintain a 7+ score. Now, very simply, we need to keep people engaged in this for it to be effective, but we've got lots of little examples of how that is making behavior change. So I've got a minute left. I'd like to share some advice from my 6-year-old daughter, because when I was being open about my challenges of mental illness, I realized I needed to be open with my family. So a few years ago, I asked my daughter, Gabby, how do we look after our mental health? And if you look carefully, she's put an L above the M. So she's more concerned about the health of our lentils, which is crucially important, I know. So I asked Gabby, how do we look after our mental health? And she said, no accidents, put your helmet on your bike and think a lot, which is not always the right answer if we're anxious. So I asked her a specific question. I said, Gabby, if you woke up one day and you were not feeling yourself, you were feeling sad, you didn't know why, you didn't want to play, what would you do? And my 6-year-old daughter looked at me like I was asking the most obvious question in the world. She said, Daddy, I would find someone who I love and I would tell them. I would talk. Find someone who you love and tell them. And then I said, if you went to school one day and you were feeling a bit low, you saw somebody looking a bit low, sitting off to the side, not acting, not playing like they normally do, what would you do? And she looked at me like I was a complete and utter idiot. She said, Daddy, I would go over and I would see if they're okay. So 10 seconds. 2 things we overcomplicate as adults in society. If you're struggling with your own mental health, and we will, please find someone you love or you trust and talk. And if you see colleagues that are acting differently in terms of their behavior, go and see if they're okay. Thank you very much. My name is Rob Stephenson. It has been such a pleasure to present to you. Thank you for the opportunity.